It's crazy how often we get this problem wrong. For the sample equation I'm going to give you, we often think that there are only one or two values of x that make y 0. But it's crazy because there are actually three in this sample problem. When I tell you that f of x equals x to the fourth minus 2x squared equals 0, I'm asking you to find the zeros. So in other words, what values of x would you plug in where f of x or y would result in a value of 0? Now, the first approach you might take is, you know what? Both terms have an x squared in them, so why don't I simply divide both sides of the equation by x squared? Now, when you do that, you get x squared minus 2 equals 0, but there's already a very common mistake that we do here. Can you tell me in the comments below what's wrong with this approach? Okay, so when you divide by x squared, you have to be very clear that x squared, or in other words, x, cannot be 0, because remember, dividing by 0 isn't allowed. So if you are going to use that approach, you need to make that cautionary point and show in your work that x cannot be 0. And then after you solve the equation, go back and now resolve it for that value of x that you excluded, which is 0, and see if that happens to be a root as well. I'm not going to use that approach. I'll show you what I do below, but that's the first mistake to point out. Now, before I go on to the second mistake, if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button, and also be sure to turn on bell notifications so you don't miss my future videos. Let's just go ahead and restart our approach then with this problem. So you have x to the fourth minus 2x squared equals 0. The next thing you might notice is every single term has a value of x in there, right? Because they all have this x term. So why don't we just simply take an obvious approach of simply plugging in 0 and saying, you know what? X equals 0 is our answer, because 0 to the fourth minus 2 times 0 squared is 0. Is that the final answer? Tell me if that's a mistake. Leave a comment below and see what you come up with. Okay, so you should have noticed that yes, x equals 0 is one of the answers here, but it's not going to be all of them. So let's be mindful that we can't just simply look at a problem like this and simply plug in 0 and assume we're done. There's more work to do, and I'm going to show you what I do down here. So doing this problem the right way, when we start with 0 equals x to the fourth minus 2x squared, you can just simply use factorization. So when you factor out the x squared from both terms, you'll get that 0 equals x squared, and in parentheses, you're left with x squared minus 2. Now, to properly solve this problem, notice that there are one of two things that can happen here. Either x squared or what's in parentheses can all equal 0, because remember, 0 times anything is 0. So we can break this up into two sides and solve them separately. Now, for the left-hand side, you have x squared equals 0, so we know for a fact that x equals 0 is a root. For the second side, we just simply set it to 0. We're going to say that x squared minus 2 must equal 0. And when you solve for x, we get the square root of 2. But I also just made another mistake here. Let me know how to fix this, because the square root of 2 is an answer, but it's not the only one. Okay, so you should have realized that when you take the square root, you need to be mindful that the minus square root of 2 is also a root. And there you go. So our final answer does in fact have these three different values of x as the solution. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to check out this playlist. And also, as a bonus homework problem for you, tell me what you think of this one. Find the roots of x cubed minus 4x and leave comments below on what you come up with, and I'll catch you later.